I don't think we fail intentionally. I think the
But then you're admitting that parents are failing.
oh yes, and I think we would be wrong to say, we are all 100% perfect parents. I don't think there is anything like that.
On each day you feel like giving up, I pray you find a reason to hold on.
Hi everyone. So today's session, we have a session based on parenting. So we have our lovely guests joining us this evening. That's Collins Dazi and Beatrice Frimpong. Thank you so much for joining us today. We just want you to introduce yourselves.
My name is Collins Dazi. I am a father of 3 children. I have 2 boys and a girl. I have a 7-year-old boy. He comes first. The second is a 5-year-old girl. And then the last is 6 months. And still counting the days. So I recently moved to the UK barely a few weeks back and looking to build a family here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Beatrice?
Nice. So my name is Beatrice Frimpong. I am also a mother of 4 boys. I am a nurse. I am also a deaconess in the Church of Pentecost.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So this evening or this session.
And who are you?
Who am I? I'm a wife, a mother of 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, a wife to a doctor, and yeah. Who are you?
I'm the husband you're talking about.
Right. So let's move on to our discussion. The first question is, how important is a parent's self-awareness prior to parenting? So, in other words, before someone becomes a parent, should they know themselves? Should they know who they are?
Thank you very much, Frida. That's an interesting question because I personally never thought about being self-aware before becoming a parent. But I guess those who are yet to be parents have the luxury of thinking through this question. For me, I think it does help to be self-aware, especially of one's weaknesses and also of one's upbringing. Um, for instance, for me, like I said, I never got the chance to do that, and so the self-awareness was after I became a parent, and I'm still going through that self-awareness because through my kids, I'm actually discovering myself too in a way. And an example is I used to get very angry. I had my first son. He cries like a lot. He cries unnecessarily, and I'll get angry, beat him for crying, and then he cry again, and I keep beating him for crying, until I was told that I used to cry so much when I was a kid, to the extent that one landlord wanted to throw us out of the house, and I was crying unnecessarily. They called me Isura in the area anytime we get there. And I went there a few years back. Someone told me, "Ah, and you in na home." And ever since I got that information, like surprisingly, when I see my son crying, I just step back and just watch him. I'm at peace with myself because I realize that he's just reflecting what I did as a child. And so this is one of the examples. And so being aware of one's upbringing and also being self-aware, especially like I said, of one's weaknesses, is very key. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Collins. Beatrice?
Yes, I think being self-aware is very important. I think when we are getting married, the things that you look out for, the things that you assess even in the partner to ensure that he's ready to marry you or you are ready to marry him. I think when it comes to being a parent, we subconsciously don't think about it that deeply, unlike if we are getting married or if we are taking these huge steps in life. I think as parenting, and as my brother said, brother Colin said, it's something that you don't think about, but I think it's really, really key. I mean, looking at it now, you would want to be self-aware. Look at your own strengths, look at your own weaknesses. Am I ready to be a parent? What can I bring to the table? In fact, even financially, socially, am I ready to be a parent? Can I look after this child? Can a human being depend on me? Will I be mentally, emotionally stable to be able to look after and bring up another person? So I think these are things that we don't I definitely did not think through it like that before having children, but I think it's very important to be able to be a good parent. I think it really starts with self-awareness.
Yeah, I think, like you all said, maybe this is something we should have been told or had a chat with, a parent or someone, an advisor, a counselor, before becoming parents. I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
Yeah, I agree with Beatrice and with Collins. We talk of temperament, and temperaments basically, they help you to know who you are, why you behave the way you behave, and also understand yourself, and then understand others as well. So if if you are aware of whom you are, your problems are virtually half solved. Yes, and so knowing whom you are, that's the self-awareness we're talking about. Knowing whom you are, knowing what and how other people also are, helps you to relate with them. And in the same way, you're going to raise children, and you would need to understand their temperaments, their temperamental traits, why they do the things they do. Like Colin said, his child was behaving in a certain way until he found out that he was doing the same thing. He did not even understand his son.
Or even worse.
Yeah. And so when we understand how human beings behave in the line of temperaments, it helps us to understand ourselves. It helps us to understand the people that we're relating with. And in this case, those are our children. Yeah. And so self-awareness, as we've said, is pretty much basic and is important. Yeah, for every parent.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I guess the point about temperament again, it's very very crucial. But like I previously said, it's difficult to know some of these things even before becoming a parent. And so I think part of the self awareness is the willingness to accept your weakness after you become a parent. So, for instance, when my child or when they throw like tantrums, it gets to me sometimes. It makes me very either angry or frustrated. Then I take a step back to ask myself, what is actually frustrating? Is it the tantrums they're throwing, or it is what they're throwing the tantrums at? And so at a point, I realized that the more I became angry at them throwing tantrums, the more they actually became also agitated and they were doing it more. And for a period, I actually discussed this with my wife. For a period, we decided not to react to any of their tantrums and realized that it was actually now helping them. And so, in as much as you go through the process of being self-aware of some of your weaknesses, and in as much as you're also shaping your child's temperament through this process, I think a big part is also accepting that, for instance, these are the things that gets to me, these are the things that gets me angry. And so once you understand, you see those triggers, I guess it helps you to become more self-aware and also helps shape your children's temperament. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Collins and Beatrice.
What are the responsibilities of parents? Maybe we can start with Beatrice this time.
Yeah.
So responsibilities is is huge, is wide. I don't think where do we start from? I think this person you've created solely relies on you from head to toe, completely relies on you as a parent. So your responsibilities are very, very broad and wide, from physical, the upbringing of the child. And I mean, we can go into details from the feeding to the bathing to the clothing to the education, to then ensure you bring them up emotionally, because it's not just a physical upbringing. We need to bring up children emotionally to be emotionally stable, mentally stable. Um, So yes, there is a lot, and I think if we are going to go into details, which we will as we go by, I think there are a lot of things that we are going to explore. But I think um a parent has a huge responsibility. As I said, this child solely relies on you, everything to everything to everything. So there is a lot that we as parents need to sacrifice when this child is around and when this child is here, to be able to bring them up. Talking about mentally and emotionally, this is something that sometimes we um you know divert or don't necessarily take into consideration a lot, but it's key. I think sometimes parents, we tend to think, it's the necessities, the basics that we need to provide for the children, and we are talking about the where to live, the shelter, the food, the clothing. But I think emotional and mentally is probably, as if not 50-50, likewise shared, because a lot of our children these days are we live in a society where the children are being taught to think for their own. There is something that they are taught at school. There are things that we teach them at home. But I think the emotional part where we tend to neglect is where, we don't communicate with our children. We don't communicate. We don't have that friendship or relationship. I mean, myself growing up, my parents used to be, there's nothing like sitting around and talking. Yes, how was school? But there was no actual communication. When something happened at school, what did happen, and what happened, and did you report it, or what was the what made you laugh? That's something I asked the kids a lot. I said, what made you laugh at school today? What was funny? Or what happened that was interesting. It's about building this connection. It's about building the emotions. So as parents, it's not just the physical part. It's not just the providing for them and working and working and working to provide for them. But I think it's a holistic approach, isn't it? It's a holistic approach where we take everything into consideration, or should do anyway.
Spot on, Auntie Beatrice. That is so true. I think I want to link this to the previous discussions we were having, where Auntie Beatrice rightly noted that you have to ask yourself some questions to say before having kids, to be sure that you are ready for kids. Plus, going through these discussions about responsibilities, I think it makes having kids look very great. Like it's such a huge responsibility. For which reason, actually, some people are deciding not to have kids now when you think through some of these things. In addition to everything Auntie Beatrice has said, I guess two things, 2 points here. For me, you have a responsibility to the child to admit that you are discovering yourself. To put it differently, and again, this is also related to the temperament issues we're discussing. I think every parent has a responsibility to their children or to their child that they are also discovering themselves or becoming more aware. And what I mean by that is this: that, for instance, a discussion that I believe we might get into about societal barriers, or the reason for which you're having this discussion actually, when you are all out there looking for money because you are afraid to fall into the social bracket of poverty and not to be able to fund for your children, you have a responsibility to admit that because of the extent to which you are going with these things, it might be affecting your child. And so once your child, I believe, at least that has been my experience, that once your child sees that you are admitting your flaws and your weaknesses, it goes to it helps build up the child's behavior, the child's character. It helps or it contributes to the success of parenting as a whole. So in addition to everything, to like the emotional, physical, spiritual, everything needs, I think one need is to admit yourself that you are also going through a process of self-discovery. Thank you. And finally, the last point is that you have a responsibility to make home. That is something I keep striving at. That home, like wherever the kids are, they would they would have a strong like push and drive to come home, regardless of anything, regardless of they knowing that if I go wrong, mom is going to beat me. If I go wrong, dad is going to shout on me. Regardless of anything or whatever fears or anxieties they have at home has to be home. Yeah. Thank you.
With all that we have shared, would we then say that parents are failing at their responsibility?
I don't think we fail intentionally. I think the
But then you're admitting that parents are failing.
oh yes, and I think we would be wrong to say, we are all 100% perfect parents. I don't think there is anything like that. And I think that's where the self-awareness comes in, to be self-aware, and also to be aware of your parenting styles, your parenting skills. You as a parent, you need to know the kind of parent you are, so that you can assess yourself and know that, okay, I think I'm becoming too, strict these days, or I think these days I'm letting them off too much. So I think as parents, we don't want to fail. Okay, I don't think any parents want to fail, but sometimes, again, upbringing can sometimes lead us astray a little bit. The social impact or social impactation, the place we live in, the country we live in, again, can sometimes make or break us as parents. So I don't think it's an intentional thing, but I think it is well acknowledged that we could all do better in all the various fields.
Thank you. Well, I see parenting as a huge responsibility. And I don't think we realize the full extent of that responsibility. When I counsel married couples, couples who are getting married, I create this scenario. I tell them that, you see, this person you are getting married to will be the father or the mother of your children, if you have any. Oftentimes, we don't think about it. We don't think about it that way. And so, whatever you find in that person is the character that's going to raise your children. Let's just assume that something happens and you are not there. Whether you die or you're incapacitated, or for some reason you are separated from your partner and the kids, your husband, your wife, and the kids. You've left these children in the care of this person that you're getting married to. And so, well, that's for marriage. But in the choice of a partner, you should be so particular about whom you're choosing, because that's the kind of character that's going to be, instilled in the children you're going to have in the future. Yeah. But sadly, we don't look at it that way. Now, when we have had the children, also a lot of us go into it like a blank sheet. Many of us have not planned for children. Societal norms make it seem as if once you get married, you should have children. And all of us want children. Maybe 99% of us want children. So we're going into marriage, barring the circumstances of those who do not get married and then have children. We're going into marriage and then expecting that, we should have children. When it hasn't come, there's trouble. Yes, but there's no plan, there's no thought into how we're going to raise these children. There's no thought about what we're getting ourselves into. And I believe that this is where we start failing. Yeah, when we say that indeed we fail our responsibility as parents. This is where it starts from. But if we would give it a thought, like we're having these discussions, and then go through that process of identifying, certain important markers right from the start, then there's something guiding you. There's a roadmap that you're following. And so even if you go off track, something would prompt you that something is not right. And so you'd have to come back. Yeah, I see it as a huge responsibility. Somebody says that a life has been placed in your hands. And so if for all of us on this discussion, we are 4, 3, and 3, So 4 lives have been placed in your care. And a life is not to be toyed with. You cannot toy with a life. So if 4 lives have been placed in your care, what do you do with those lives? Maybe as we go on with the discussion, and we'll start looking into detail into how we deal with the lives that have been placed in our care.
I think we've covered some of the problems we are facing as parents. So is it possible to get it right? Is it possible to get parenting right? And if it is, how can we get it right?
Yes, I would say it is possible. However, it depends on what we are calling right, and it depends on the outcome. So I see two things here. Number one is the art of parenting, and then the outcome of the parenting. And the outcome being whatever child or attitude or wherever you place your child eventually. So, and the reason I am separating the two is because I've seen parents who, in quotes, have not parented rightly from everything we're discussing, haven't given sort of the right kind of training, but somehow the kids actually turned out to be very responsible, very respectful, very great people in society. And I've seen scenarios where the parents do everything, like everything you can think of, the praying, the discipline, and everything, and yet the child still doesn't come out as expected. So I think splitting the two, separating the art of parenting from the outcome of parenting now brings into the question, bring the question into context that can we get it right? On one side, I believe we definitely can get it right because it's to a very large extent in our control. That is the art of parenting. When it comes to what the kids turn out into, I strongly believe that yes, it is. We can get it right, but I guess we have to be um, what is the word? We have to be conscious of the fact that beyond the boundaries of the home, the kids are subjected to a different form of parenting outside, for which reason someone might not give the right kind of training at home, but the child is able to still come out well. So I hope this distinction makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, I agree 100% with what Colin said. Can we get it right? We can. I don't think the road to getting it right is always going to be easy. It definitely isn't. But I think yes, there are some, some parents who, a lot of parents. I mean, I'm just looking through. A lot of parents have done well with how they've brought up their children and who they've become today. So, they are getting it right. And then there are some who still need the help. And I think that's where, talks like these really come in handy for those who perhaps need a bit of direction. The road to having being a successful parent and raising successful children is definitely not an easy or a straightforward road, but definitely doable by the grace of God.
Thank you. Thank you, Beatrice and Collins. That is really good. I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I was trying to find some information. I think one psychologist, he says that give him 6 children or give him a number of children, and he will make them into whatever character you name. So, for instance, you give him 6 children, and then you name a medical doctor. He will raise one into a medical doctor. Another, an armed robber. He will raise that child into an armed robber. A pilot. So name 6 different characters, and each of the 6 children, he will make them into whatever you ask him to make them into. This definitely calls for calculated effort, and so it has to be deliberate. Yes, and I think that as much as Bible admonishes us and tells us that time and chance happened to them all, there are situations like Collins related where some very good people have ended up raising children and they were not so much like their parents. And again, some not so good people have per chance raised and had children who were so much in line, falling in line. Yes, but the majority of upbringing, the majority of training, raising of children comes from either the lack of effort or um, otherwise thereof. And so some people have put in the right kind of effort and it yields results. But what I observe, in recent times has to do with neglect. There are a lot of parents who are not doing anything, who are not putting in any effort. And so how their children turn out has to do with chance or what they encounter. So if a parent hasn't taught their children to know God, the children will obviously not know God. But whatever they encounter around them is what will raise them, what will inform their opinion, their mindset. Yeah. And so if we put in the right effort, we will be able to get the children to become what we expect and want them to become. And so I love Proverbs 22 when it says that train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. Yes, we can get it right. Absolutely. But we can also get it wrong. Sometimes we think we have done it right when indeed we haven't done it right. And so when it turns out badly, it's not because chance or society did us evil, but the good we thought we were doing was not up
Good
to
enough.
the mark. Yeah. Some of us are not doing much, but we think we're doing well. Probably we focus on unimportant things, and so indeed we're putting in some effort, but the effort we're putting in is cost 90 because we're doing the wrong things. Yeah, the more important things that will bring us the results we need, probably we're not putting in. Yeah.
We go to the next one. So we want to discuss some of the societal barriers that hinders our efforts to become good parents. I'm not. I don't want us to try and find faults or blame society, but I think there are some things that may hinder us from becoming good parents. So I would just want us to discuss that.
I think sometimes or most times it's the individual's upbringing, I would say, because how you were brought up is how you will also bring up your children. Um, in this current era, in this current um, crisis, would I call it, there is lack of time. There is lack of time. I see too often too many people. It's all about work, 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 because society takes so much away from us. There is so much to be paid that you don't intentionally want to be a bad parent, but you are most times left with not much of a choice. What do you do when bills need to be paid? What do you do when the kids need to be fed? So again, it makes it difficult where, for example, you could be spending time with the kids and trying to communicate and get to know them. That time sometimes we don't have. Not that we don't, but I think that the life and the lifestyle and the country that we are in makes it sometimes a little bit difficult for us to do our best or to do as much as we would like to do. So I think that sometimes makes it difficult for us as well. Again, I think the friends that our children associate themselves with, especially if they happen to be children who are not of the same kind. Let me put it this way: if they are not culturally or from our background, or again, spiritually, or they're not even of the same religion, it makes it difficult for you to be the parent that you want to be, because no matter what we do, outside of the house, the kids step out of the house. They have their friends, they have the teachers, So again, what you can do as a parent is what you can do. Sometimes the outside influence can also make it hard for us as parents to do what we have to do.
Thank you, Beatrice. Collins.
That's very, very good insights, Beatrice. So I'll just take off from where Beatrice ended on the outside influence. I think one of the societal barriers that affects us in becoming good parents are the expectations of what being a good parent is. Sometimes I think in a quest to be a good parent, like Fred was saying, in a quest to be a good parent, you might think you are doing the right thing, but you only realize that you are actually doing it wrong. And sometimes they are informed by these external pressures or societal expectations. One example is this: that typically when you are in church or when the parent is involved in an activity and wants to focus on whatever thing he or she might be doing, one of the quickest way to engage the child is to hand the child like a phone. And what I find interesting is when I came here, at least I've been to 3 different churches, and like every child is with an iPhone. Some 7-year-old, some 6-year-old, some 8-year-old, and I asked myself, is this some kind of like an expectation that every child must have kind of a phone, playing games and all that? One thing I've made clear to my kids, especially when we're in church, is that if you see children, and I see this all the time back home in Ghana when we're in church, children are with phones and with tablets when church is going on. I tell them that this is not for us. Like, this is not for you. And they are so clear that the only way to engage yourself in church is to listen, is to sing, is to clap, is to do what we are doing. And so I feel that if you succumb to external pressures, that is one example. Another example is, for instance, discussions about beliefs, about like religious beliefs, and about things that you the parents might not necessarily believe in them, but the fact that you find yourself in a setting where you have to be sort of equitable, you don't have to seem to be discriminating, you might unconsciously roll on that thinking to your child in a way that the child also now believes that I need not speak about this thing. Yes, it is good not to speak about this in a discriminatory way, but it has to be done in a way that the child does not end up believing that they are right. So those are 2 examples I'll give. And the main point is that let's not succumb to external pressures, because it causes us to actually be not so good parents, even when we think we are being good parents. And perhaps the final one I would mention is fear of failure, which Beatrice also touched in a different perspective. Again, the drive to be good parents, the drive to succeed, and the drive not to fail in society, because we find ourselves in societies where, whether we like it or not, there are like cliques and there are groups, and so in your attempt or in a bid to fall within a particular social class, you may end up neglecting what you have to do as a parent. And so those are 2 or 3 key points I wanted to touch on. Thank you.
Right. Would you then say that parenting in our day has become more difficult in our generation? And if I see you nodding, if yes, in what way?
It's a tough question. It's a tricky one for 2 reasons. Number one, it's the first time I'm being a parent. At least I saw how my parents brought me up, and I see how I'm bringing up my children. I don't think I'm in a position to say it's more difficult in our days today than it was previously, because in as much as I have an idea of what challenges we're facing, I at least did not experience them, and so it's difficult to compare. I believe they also had their own challenges. For instance, when I was growing up, I was working like 30 minutes to school as a class 1, like a 7-year-old boy growing up. I believe that was challenging to my parents, because sometimes I didn't end up going to school. Actually, I changed my clothing into like a house attire and go out doing other stuff. And so that was a challenge. I believe that was a challenge in my parents' own side, but I didn't experience that after I grew up after some age, and my children are not experienced that. And so the whole point is that I can't compare the 2. Now, with that said, I think we have our own challenges. We have our own unique challenges that might or might not be more dire than the previous one. However, if we fail to admit that there are challenges, it now puts us in the posture where we fail to start identifying solutions to those challenges. So I think I would rather want to now, instead of thinking about how challenging our time is versus the previous times, I want to think about accepting that this is actually a challenge for me today. And then then it now opens up my mind to identifying how best to overcome those challenges. Thank you.
Very well said, Collins. I do believe that, well, I do believe that I think it's more challenging now. Simply being, I grew up in Austria, and growing up in Austria, again, those days there was, I think the Alcatel was what we used to use, the one with the antenna. We used to pull that, no internet, nothing like that. There was a lot of playing around, lots of time with the family. If I compare my growing up to my children's, I think these days the kids are being made to speak up at a very young age, to self identify what is going on now at a very young age, to tell your parents that what they're doing is wrong because they are trying to discipline you. I don't think our parents probably face those challenges as much as we are in this day. So trying to correct your child even or discipline them in this our generation is 100% more challenging, I would say, because ours now comes with law enforcement. Because if you divert from it, you've got the police knocking on your door, which I think our parents probably didn't have that huge challenge. So being able to direct us and navigate us was perhaps a little bit easier. So I think in our days, the way our children are being taught, the way they are being made to explore and do things that they want to do and not what the parents want to do. I think that gives us an additional challenge, especially if we want our children to go right. So I think yes, definitely our parents had their own challenges, but I think in this generation that we are currently in, I think it's definitely a whole new challenge altogether to be able to bring up kids.
Do parents recognize these challenges we're talking about? In my opinion, it doesn't seem like it. What do you think? Do you think that parents of this day and age, this generation, recognize the challenge? We talked about responsibility, it being a responsibility, a huge one. Do you think that parents realize it?
I I I think they realize it now. Whether they have reached that point where they feel they can't do anything else about it is perhaps the question. Because I think when parents, I mean, I'm using one of my aunties as an example, and she has her children are grown now. But when you sit up, when you're on the back seat, you would think, oh, she doesn't care anymore. It's not that she doesn't care, but I think she's now reached a point where she's thinking, oh, what's the point? They can do what they want to do because she thinks there is no progress. She thinks there is, nothing is changing, that everything is still the same. So I think it's the lack of effort, or they're now just tired and fed up of everything. And again, there is this culture in this country where when I came here, I heard it so many times. Hey, kurom ha de yɛmmoa akwalaa o. Hey, kurom ha de yɛnteatea akwalaa o. So I think some people really take it that literal, that they feel that they can't even discipline their children. So they leave them till they hit the brick wall where there is no change and there is no going back. At that point, when the tree is already, grown and it has borne fruit, What do you want to change about it? By then it's too late. So I think it's really important that we recognize these things right from beginning. The foundation is so important. I mean, my 14-year-old now, I've got a 14-year-old, and my last one is 4. The challenges now, no, it's different, and every stage with its own challenge. You think when they're little it's difficult, but it's the persistent. You have to be persistent. You have to keep at it. You have to keep at it.
And Collins, would you want to add anything?
No, I think Auntie Beatrice has nailed it. Yeah, I believe parents do recognize that it's a challenge, but I guess the point is the only reason you see something as a challenge is when you have a goal ahead of you. You have something you want to achieve, or you want to make something out of your children, and then something seems to be hindering that. That is the only way you see it as a challenge. And so, if you don't see, if you are not aiming at anything, if you don't have, and I'm not saying parents are not aiming at anything, but I guess the point is that if you fail to, like Auntie Beatrice rightly said, to commit to shaping your child, regardless of the challenges you face, you'll get to that point where, like Auntie Beatrice again rightly said, you get to that point where you might end up giving up. Yeah, so I think that the points are that number one, you definitely have to have a goal in sight, and then you would identify what those things are, what are the things preventing you from achieving that goal. And then number two, to be persistent in addressing those challenges. Last one is that you can't do away with, at least that is my belief, you can't do away without prayers. Like it has to be part of the equation. Otherwise, even the effort you make might not yield fruit.
There's no doubt my life is better 'cause you're here with